Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting video in Python series. In this particular video, we are going to talk about the print function. So basically print function helps lot to the developer because through that we can add lot of logs, we can print a lot of information about, or we can print errors. So we get a lot of information about how our program is getting executed. So in this particular video, we are going to talk about how we can use a print function in a different ways to print information, right? So let's start with a very simple print statement. So basically it's a print is a function. Before Python 2.x, we are calling it as a print statement, but now it's a function. So if you want to print any string, you can simply use print function, okay? Hello world. So this will print this, right? Now, what if you want to print multiple statements, okay? You want to print your output in a multiple statement. So by default, if let's say I have print hello, and then I have another statement, print world, right? So if I just run this, you can see by default, we are getting this output on two different lines. So how this is possible by default? So if you see the help of this print function, and there is a very important attribute we have, the third attribute, you can see the end. And the default value of that end attribute is /n. And due to that, every print function or every print statement getting ended with /n, and that's the reason we got this particular output on a two different line. If you want some different behavior apart from printing the every statement or every output on a new line, we have to override this particular argument. So let's try it. What we can do is print hello, and then another print where I'm just doing hello world. So if you do this, by default, it will print on a new line. But if you want, instead of adding the /n at the end, you can override this attribute. Let's say you are using this kind of a string. So now if you run it, you can see the output now, instead of going into the new line, it is giving that character. So we are just overwriting the default behavior of the end attribute. So similarly, we have another argument that is separator. So what is the use of that? Let me just take an example. So print hello, and let's say we have another string world. So if you run this, by default, you can see there is no space what we have specified, but it is output, it is showing it with a space. Why this is happening? Because here you can see the separator between two string is by default is a space. If you want to override this behavior with something else, you are good to do that. So let's take an example, print hello, and then another string world. So if you want to overwrite, you can see by default it is printing space. But if you want, let's add this separator attribute and whatever string you want to add it. Let's say you add something like this. So now if I run it, you can see we got the output like this. Or if you want to use any different separator, go ahead and use, let's say dot. We got that separate, right? So let me repeat, this end attribute you want to override, by default value is /n. If you want to change the behavior, what would be at the end of your line? You can use override end. Okay, override end attribute. Now, if there are two strings you are using in a print statement, by default, there is a space. Okay, that way it will add between two strings. If you want to change the behavior, just override this separate, right? Now, this is very simple. Let's say you have A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20. Now, if you want to print, how you can do? Value of A is, you can do A. So if you just print it, you can see we got the output of value A here like this. Now, instead of doing this, let's say you have another print statement, something like this, print value of A is, so you can use %d as well here, %d, and value of B is %d, right? And then for this, to get this value replaced, you can use A, comma B. Perfect. So now if you run it, not enough argument, just give me a second. Here we have to use bracket. Okay. And here you can see now value of A and B got replaced. So instead of a first person D, A got replaced. Instead of a second B, B got replaced. So this is another way of printing the value. Now let me show you another one where we use the format function. So what we can do, print value of A. You can use simply a curly bracket, and value of B is again another curly bracket. And then here you have to use dot format, and you can use A, comma B. So by default, this would be considered as a tuple. 0th value will be assigned to first curly bracket. First value will be assigned to the second curly bracket, right? And if you want to change the sequence, let's say you want to assign the value of B first and assign the value of A second. In that case, you have to just add this index here. So 1 index here and 0 index here. And you can see value got exchanged, right? So this is another way of printing the value. Now let me add another one where we call it as a F string. So what we do is basically it's almost same, okay, with a very small change. So instead of using a dot format, you have to use a F string here, okay? F, we need to use it. Now, instead of using 1 or 0, you can directly add the value, variable names here, okay? AB. And we don't require anything now here. Simply you can do like this. So this is a better way, and this is very frequently used because you can see this looks very it's very easy to write, right? Here if you see, we don't need to write a long string. In above all other options, we had to do use a format function as well as A, comma B. Also here we are using percent and %D. So here this last option is a very simple, where you can simply use a normal string. Then you have to add the F here at the start of this, and then instead of a curly bracket, along with curly bracket, you have to use the actual variable name. So automatically Python will understand it, and it will go ahead and replace the value. So this is very important to understand, because nowadays this is something used very frequently. So I hope everyone got the different ways of using a print function. So we started with the argument like and separator usage of that. And then we have seen different ways of printing it by using %, the format method, or the F string we call it as. So that's it for this video. I hope everyone likes this. Thanks for watching this. If you have not subscribed the channel yet, and if you feel this information is very important, so then subscribe the channel. Thanks everyone.